It may have come as a shock to many Nigerians following the statement made by the chairman of Dangote Group and owner of Dangote Refinery, Aliko Dangote, stating that the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited (NNPCL) no longer owns a 20% stake in Dangote Refinery. Rather, the Nigerian oil company now owns only 7.2% of the refinery due to the NNPC's failure to pay the balance of their share, which was due last month in June. Reacting to the statement made by Dangote, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company (NNPCL) clarified why it holds only a 7.2% equity in the $19 billion Dangote Refinery instead of the widely speculated 20%. Through its Chief Corporate Communications Officer, Femi Shoneye, the NNPCL says its decision to reduce its investment was based on commercial reasons and was carefully considered and communicated several months ago to Aliko Dangote.
Now, it is not a hidden report that the national oil company is struggling to pay international oil traders a backlog of $6 billion amid subsidy removal, and there are fresh plans to borrow an additional $2 billion in crude oil-backed loans from international creditors to boost its financial inflow. Concerned Nigerians are asking why the Dangote Refinery isn't getting the needed support on investments, and what could be the major reason for the sudden pause in investments. Joining us is investigative journalist who has, of course, taken an interest in for a while in the Dangote Refinery, and of course has made his views known about the refinery project for many, many years now. David Hundeyin. Good morning, David. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. I mean, I think a lot of people are familiar with your views on the refinery project. You've never really had a lot of faith in it. And so let's first of all start with that. You know, have your views changed lately? Do you think that, you know, this is just like you've always stated, that it was never a project that would that was viable, you know, the way that it was initially promoted? And are these clear signs, you know, that you were right all along?
So I guess I should specify that my argument was never that the project doesn't have any chance of coming to fruition. My argument was that the project was being politicized. It was being used as a political battering ram. It was being used as a political tool, and that the project management was being characterized by political chicanery, such as for example, the constant shifting of deadlines. So it's going to be open this year. It's going to be open next year. So if you've been keeping up with the amount of times that the deadline for full opening of the refinery has been mooted, it's been shifted no fewer than 9 different times from when we first started hearing of this refinery in 2013, which was 11 years ago. So that was always the bone of my contention, that there's a political game going on here, because it's only when politics is involved that people are used as footballs like that. But going to your question about basically what I think of the refinery now, again, the management of the Dangote Refinery obviously should feel free to prove everybody wrong if they feel as though there's the impression that maybe it's not being taken serious, or maybe the public doesn't have faith in the refinery. They should feel free to prove the public wrong, because from the last time I appeared on this show, in fact, to talk about this very refinery, which was just a few weeks ago, 2 different deadline shifts have happened again since then. So we were told before the end of June, they're going to be producing petrol. And then it was, before the end of July. And then as at yesterday, it's shifted again, August. Now, what I said last year, which was based on insider information, was that it's very unlikely that this thing was ever going to start full production till at least 2025. Right. And when I made that statement, this was in June 2023. We're in July 2024 now, where we're looking at the second half of 2024. And the goalposts just keep on shifting. So, and then this piece of information that came out yesterday, where it seems very much as though the NNPC has not followed through on its word. I mean, it was very big news at the time that the federal government had adopted a 20% stake in the refinery. That was widely interpreted to mean that the Nigerian government was throwing its weight, its very considerable weight behind the refinery, which in and of itself would have been good news, because let's be very clear about this. Nigeria does need local refining capacity. It's a travesty that one of the world's most significant oil exporters doesn't have significant local refining capacity to satisfy its own local demand, and that Nigeria keeps on adhering to that African economic stereotype where we export unfinished material, raw material, and import finished goods, which is a surefire way of keeping yourself in poverty, right? So it's in everybody's interest for this refinery actually to work, even if it's not earning export income, even if it's just for the sole purpose of reducing the amount of forex that is used to import refined petroleum products. That in and of itself would be a good thing. So there's nobody who doesn't want this refinery to work. However, I think both the management of the refinery and increasingly the federal government are not being honest. There's clearly something afoot here where you have, in the space of 1 year from when President Buhari left office, where you've had such a marked shift in position from the government, where the government, which at the time Buhari left office was almost referring to Dangote Refinery like it was part of a Nigerian federal government portfolio. And then you have a federal government under Bola Tinubu, which is now making comments like the investment in Dangote Refinery didn't align with our strategic goals, whatever those strategic goals might be. I don't know how a Nigerian government would say that a project of the size and scope of Dangote Refinery and the economic importance of Dangote Refinery doesn't match its strategic goals. So you'd have to ask yourself, what are the strategic goals of such a government then? That's for them to answer.
All right, all right. Thank you very much for explaining that very clearly. So what will then be the implications of, what the latest update is from 20% to 7.2% equity? Also, we did hear of the deal that the NNPCL entered into with Lekki Refinery Funding Limited in September of 2021. They had gotten $1.036 billion to be a part of this Dangote project. Unfortunately, even though they had said they're going to be repaying with 35,000 barrels per day for this debt, what happened to it in the first place? Why? Maybe this is a way to ask for you to maybe help us get an explanation as why it dropped from 20% to 7.2%.
To be honest, the only person who can answer that question, or the only organization that can answer that question, is the NNPC itself. However, from the little that I know, it's clear that the political situation is at least partially responsible for what we're seeing, that the position of the federal government has shifted significantly over the past year, where, as I said, from the Buhari era position where the NNPC was willing and able to bend over backwards to provide whatever help or assistance was possible, including assistance which Nigerians were not even informed about, which may have skirted the realms of of legality, to a situation now where, as I said, NNPC is now making comments like this does not align with our strategic interests, whatever that means. So from the little that I know from the political situation in Abuja, it does seem as though the person, the man, Aliko Dangote, for whatever reason, is not in the best graces of the current government for whatever political reason. Again, I don't want to sort of come on TV and, repeat people's theories, because the information that I have access to, it's impossible to verify independently. So there's this theory and there's that theory. He may be aligned with so and so politician. There's no way to verify that independently. But what we do know, which is publicly provable, is that the government's position, which is directly traceable to the political situation in Nigeria, has changed. So where it maybe a year ago, we wouldn't even have been having such a conversation. There was no kind of inputs, there was no kind of assistance, there was no kind of help that the government wasn't ready and willing to offer. Now we have a situation where even obtaining feedstock for the refinery has become an issue, where Nigeria, which is a significant oil exporting country, all of a sudden suddenly cannot find feedstock for Dangote Refinery, one of the world's largest refineries. And we're now hearing stories about Dangote having to import feedstock from the US and from Brazil and whatnot. And what that would mean inevitably, if the refinery is having to spend forex to import feedstock from abroad, then what that would mean inevitably is that the usefulness, the economic usefulness of the refinery, which is primarily supposedly to ease pressure on Nigeria's forex reserves, that goal will not be achieved because the pressure on Nigeria's forex reserves will remain at least constant, if even to maintain production or to kickstart production, one has to spend US dollars to import feedstock. Then that would mean that even the price at which one would even be able to sell the finished product, if one is selling in Naira, one will have to sell it at a price that will enable one to recoup one's US dollar investment. So you might end up with locally refined petroleum products, which are even more expensive than petroleum products that are already on the market, which does not help anyone. Or you will end up selling to the international market, which probably will be good for Dangote. But again, in the context of Nigerian consumer, also doesn't help anyone. So the Nigerian government is actually the main villain here, is the main culprit here. So questions need to be asked of the people in Aso Rock, that what is it that Dangote or the Dangote Refinery has done to them that in the space of 1 year, their situation and their position on it has changed so dramatically, something that is such a major part, or should be such a major part of Nigeria's economic strategy. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're acting as if it's a minor irritation or something.
Ask if we know for sure what exactly has become of the $1.036 billion funding, seeing as Dangote is saying the NNPCL was not able to pay their own part, and that's also not forgetting the Afrexim deal as well. Do we know what has become of these debts, and should we even have the right to ask?
We absolutely should have the right to ask, but again, as I've said on this show before, the management of the refinery definitely doesn't help its own case, because where it's convenient, the management used to love to hide behind the government and act as though it used to be very happy to accept government assistance, including assistance which, as I said, skirted the rules of legality where it was convenient. But where it was convenient, it would also hide behind the fact that it's a private entity and it's not entitled, or we are not entitled to certain pieces of information. So now we have a situation where, as you said, there are all sorts of deals and contracts that were signed, which were public knowledge. All of a sudden, we're not hearing anything about those things. Even as I was referring to a few moments ago, even the fact that somehow accessing feedstock is a problem, there should be a public explanation for that, right? Even if for whatever reason the political situation has changed and the government isn't forthcoming with an explanation to Nigerians, I believe the refinery itself or the management should be forthcoming with such an explanation. Instead, we have people making greasy sort of conspiracy-light suggestions, people coming out and saying there's an oil mafia which is even more powerful than the drug mafia, and the oil mafia is trying to ensure that this refinery is a stillbirth, which, again, that's not a solid pointer as to what's happening. That's just a tantalizing hint thrown in the air, right? We need to know. I believe we're entitled to know. Given that, first of all, this refinery was given massive access to public money, to funding from the CBN, and it's been marketed for more than a decade now as the panacea to Nigeria's economic woes, and the management of the refinery was very happy for it to be used politically. I believe that if for whatever reason things aren't going well now, the public is also entitled to an explanation. What exactly is going wrong? Why exactly Are things not going the way they are supposed to go? As you said, there's an Afrexim deal. What happened to that? The announced value of the NNPC's investment, all of a sudden that has changed. It has more than cut in half. What happened? The NNPC had agreed to supply so and so number of barrels per day of feedstock. All of a sudden, that's not happening. Why is that? The essentially the oil production cartel in Nigeria supposedly has locked this refinery out of the Nigerian supply chain, and the only place for this refinery to access feedstock is importing from across the Atlantic. What is going on with that? I believe we're entitled to these explanations, but both the management of the refinery and the federal government are very intransigent for some reason, because for whatever reason, they believe that Nigerians, they maybe, just sort of shut up and, wait for things to happen as and when they happen, which I fundamentally disagree with. But here we are.
I think many people would agree with you. There's not been a lot of clarity from the Nigerian government, from the NNPC, and of course other government agencies when these questions are asked. Many people, of course, are directing the questions to the NNPC to clarify exactly why they couldn't meet up with the remaining $1.76 billion payment that would have likely sealed their 20%. But I also want you to talk a little bit more about the oil-backed loans that the NNPC keeps getting itself involved with. The Afrexim, and of course others that, for example, this balance of 1.76 was going to be paid with 300,000 barrels per day from the NNPC. So clarify if the NNPC is also struggling with oil production. We have an OPEC quota we're meant to be meeting. We are struggling to meet that one. At the same time, we're getting into oil-backed loans with different places here and there. How much of a struggle is the NNPC likely in to meet up with these oil-backed loan commitments and to, of course, generate crude oil?
So we don't have to go far to get some sort of indication as to what is happening with the NNPC. As you rightly said, the OPEC quota that Nigeria has, I believe the last time Nigeria actually hit its OPEC quota with some regularity was coming up to a decade ago. So I think all through the majority of the Buhari years and continuing into the current era, it became a norm that Nigeria doesn't get anywhere near either its optimum daily outputs or its OPEC quota. It's just a normal thing now. At a point last year, Nigeria's oil production actually fell as far as, I think, 800,000 barrels per day, which is like a historical low that hasn't been experienced maybe since the early 80s or something like that. So clearly, the NNPC is struggling. And in addition to the NNPC struggling to fulfill its quota, the oil production of Nigeria in general, or at least the official oil production of Nigeria in general, is really struggling. Why I said stated is that, again, there are several indications which are not independently provable, but there are several separate pieces of information which has come out over the past 3 to 4 years, which indicate that there's an incredible amount of oil theft going on. So if Nigeria officially produces, let's say, 1.3 million barrels per day, the actual amount of crude oil being produced might be double that. We have basically no way of knowing. So there's an incredible amount of oil theft going on, both onshore and offshore. It's essentially a free-for-all. Kind of like how there are these deeply entrenched cartels in illegal mining, which basically nobody outside of that space knows anything about. There are similar and even more deeply entrenched cartels in oil extraction. And there's an international angle as well, because even allegedly some of the international oil majors also have involvement in these things. So again, we don't even know how much oil Nigeria is producing. The numbers we have access to are the official numbers, which are almost certainly nothing close to the reality. So it's clear that the NNPC is struggling to meet its targets. But again, being the Nigerian government institution that it is, it doesn't seem to believe that Nigerians are entitled to ask questions or to know about these things. Probably if the GMD of the NNPC is watching this interview, he's probably going to be irritated that why is NNPC's issue being discussed in the press. It's not our business, because the NNPC fundamentally doesn't see itself as a government parastatal, which it is. It sees itself almost as a private entity, which it categorically is not.
Thank you very much, David, for joining us. We're going to keep following up with the NNPCL story. I've been seeing calls on social media for a number of people have been saying that the Senate should probably call them, the National Assembly should call them to the NNPCL, that is, to answer some questions. But I don't know how that is going to pan out. I guess we're going to wait and see how it turns out. Thank you for your time with us.
Thank you, man.